Welcome back to the Mocktown podcast. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Declan.
Hello.
My name's Saxon, and we're here to talk about One Piece. And in this episode, we're specifically talking about the Mural, which was released in chapter 1138. I'm sure most people know about it. Elbaf, Frankie is shown by Ripley, I believe it was. An ancient mural that dates back at least 900 years. And we're going to break that puppy down because I think there's a lot to talk about. How you doing today?
I'm surprised that was one take.
I know, I can't believe I did it.
There was some struggle leading up to that. Yeah, I'm good. Break week. We're just relaxing.
We relaxed, nothing to dissect as much except...
We're just sipping on some Monster Energy white flavour.
Yeah, we love it.
You got some water.
I got water because I'm a hydrated boy. I respect my hydration.
And you know what else I reckon you've got? Some ideas.
I got some ideas.
Some ideas for the big mural.
I've been looking. I haven't really broken down the words as much because it's a little bit more discussion based. I think there's a lot of openings to how or what's being said can be interpreted. But I think we can go through a lot of what is drawn in the mural and find parallels to the current world, and maybe hints to what actually happened. I believe the planet has now been named Blue Star officially. So the history of the Blue Star planet, in One Piece.
Yeah, this is maybe not the first world.
No. In fact, this is said to us to be the third world, the third time human history has had sort of a hard reset, which is exciting. And if we know now that the action that maybe gave the world government the ability to wipe all this stuff out was through flooding, which we got over, 20 chapters in Egghead. Broken down. We're not going to run through the entirety of the Egghead speech, just because there was a lot to talk about, and frankly, we want to talk about the mural. But I am going to start us by talking about what mentions of the ancient kingdom we had pre-mural.
Let's go for it.
So it all started during Robin's flashback during the Enies lobby arc. We get the O'Hara Buster call, which was a horrific and gut-wrenching backstory, but also it was our first introduction to an ancient kingdom that existed 900 years ago in the time that is considered to be the Void Century. So I'm actually going to start by just reading out off what Clover said in this initial interaction or announcement of the ancient kingdom. Clover basically starts with whatever lies in the past, if it is part of human history, history of humanity, then it should be accepted completely. If we confront everything that has happened without fear, we will be able to counter anything that happens. So he just wants the truth out there.
Mm-hmm.
Good starting place.
It happened.
Yeah.
He's like, well, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about what caused this to happen. Where did this history go? We go on to him. I wonder about that. Isn't it just convenient for you to disallow it? The greatest truth that we seek in the world today is not the poneglyph, but the reason for their existence. Why did the people of the past resort to writing on stone? In order to convey a message to the future? They dotted the world with these unbreakable stone tablets, onto which they carved their history. Isn't this because they felt that their message would be eradicated if left only on paper and books? And we find out that, that's exactly what the world government intended to do. Fortunately, as we know through hindsight, the giants of Elbaf were able to collect O'Hara's resources and take them to Elbaf, which is known as a secular nation within the Blue Star world. It is well guarded through not only the warriors of Elbaf, but just through the history and the status of the power of the giants just inevitably protects the island. Much like Wano, it's not a place that the world government has been able to seize. I am just going to quickly finish off before I get your thoughts. If we assume that people were annihilated by their enemy, then this enemy survived through the subsequent history. Doflamingo also said something similar where he goes, history is written by the victors. Right and wrong, morality is decided by who wins a war. And I think the ultimate story is maybe we need to question history a little bit more in our own world. And that it sort of follows through that history is written by the victors. So there's obviously downsides to that.
Well, no one wants to listen to what a loser has to say.
Yeah, but honestly, they often have... You need to hear both sides to find the truth somewhere in the middle, which is almost always the case, especially with history. Yeah.
Yeah. Agree.
And coincidentally, the 100-Year Void ended 800 years ago, which marks the birth of the world government. If the world government happened to be the enemy of the people who were annihilated, we can conclude that the 100-Year Void contains a history that was inconvenient to the world government and hence has been erased. After reading ancient manuscripts and the few poneglyphs that have been found, we gradually discovered the existence of a nation of which no trace now remain. What is clear from these manuscripts is the existence of an immense kingdom. He then goes on, it appears that they once had enormous power, but all the information about this kingdom has been relentlessly erased. It's probable that these people understand they would be destroyed by the alliance of nations later called the world government, carved the truth of their existence onto pieces of stone which survive to this day, known as the poneglyphs. We then get a bit of silhouette, which in hindsight we can now say confidently it's the Gorosei. I think at this time we had maybe been alluded to them, but we had not heard of them. But even then,
have you got a photo there?
I have got a photo. Of a silhouette, which the character designs are very accurate to what the Gorosei are. So I think the Gorosei would maybe fully seem pretty close to this.
May I see it?
Oh, of course.
I have it up on the screen for you as well.
So one there.
Oh, yeah, that's them.
Clover goes on to scream, without a doubt, the so-called ancient weapons could destroy the world. However, and more importantly, history will reveal that the very existence and idea of this kingdom is in fact what the world government finds so threatening. Isn't that so? I think he's aware that there's probably world government people listening to these conversations beyond the Marines that are in front of Clover. So I think this is, in a way that Vegapunk's message was to the world, Clover's message was to Emu directly, even though he didn't know of the existence of Emu. We still don't know the nature of these threats, but the key is this ancient kingdom that once thrived, and its name was... We don't get the name. We still don't have the name.
Nope.
So that was our introduction to the ancient kingdom. Did you think much of this when you read initially?
No. Nothing. I wasn't taking any of this stuff in. But I was also powering through it, and this was like a decade ago at this point now. So
yeah.
I think a lot of those little things I just was not paying attention to, or didn't think it would become anything.
Yeah, I think it was hard, especially so early in pre-time skip, for us to know the magnitude, I guess, of things like the Ancient Kingdom and what Clover was really saying. But now that we've gotten Vegapunk's message, which I'm not going to read out to you because that would just be an hour in itself, we can sort of figure that the world government, there was some form of war between them and the Ancient Kingdom. And I think that story is shown in a way that is quite interesting in the mural. But that was our first mention of the Ancient Kingdom was during the O'Hara flashback. as a whole, did you remember much of the O'Hara flashback? Because I remember it vividly. I think it's maybe my favourite flashback in the whole story of any of the Straw Hats.
I don't remember anything. I definitely have to go through. I just need to reread it.
Yeah.
I think I need to just start from the beginning and just read through One Piece again.
I think a big part about this announcement is it was strictly for the viewers. This isn't a moment of Robin telling her story to the crew. It's a moment of her remembering her life as it was. I think that has a really big impact because that was in around chapter 400, 385, 386, I believe. The next mention that the Straw Hats are actually given is on Egghead when they discover Emmett, or the giant robot, which we later learn its name is Emmett and was a friend of Joy Boy. Which I think gives you a lot of information on like how the sides are rolling. We can guess that the world government was one side, the 20 Kingdoms was one side, and we can probably assume that Emu led that side, and the other side was likely Joy Boy, who has been revealed to be the first ever pirate. It was probably Joy Boy and his merry friends with the ancient kingdom. It is an interesting.
But it's hard with One Piece because one thing will get mentioned 20 years ago and now is only playing a part into it. So it's like, sure, I could have cared about what Clover said 10 years ago, but then it wouldn't have been mentioned for so long, I had just forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
But now all these things are coming back and I've now lost them. And I'm like, fuck, I don't remember anything. So it's a bit like that. Remember his haircut, though.
No, yeah, fantastic haircut.
Clover haircut, boom, here it is.
Fantastic haircut.
Edit.
I think we should put it on Declan.
Or, watch out, next week, I'm getting a haircut. Join us live from the barber shop.
Hell yeah, boy. It's a, Oda is the master of Chekhov's gun. You know, there's a gun on a wall. It's going to get used eventually, if not straight away. And Oda doesn't have Chekhov's gun. He has Chekhov's armory. You walk in there and it's equal to the US's manpower. It's just weapons everywhere. He's ready to use so many things. We still haven't really gotten the immortality surgery from, or any of the powers that Law can use. Big up, new Law statue as well, if you can see that in the corner.
I think he might be appearing.
It might be a little bit. You may be able to see him a little bit.
Damn, it's an impressive
but we all know that is probably how Emu is who he is today, or who they are today. Yeah, well, my personal opinion, let's just quickly touch on Emu because I believe they show up in the mural. Actually, let's leave that for the right time. We're just going to go through every part of the mural, all the photos, all the characters, and then I'm going to break down what's actually said about the murals afterwards.
Saxon's done some homework.
I've done a fair bit of homework. I've gone through and screenshotted everything. I have just spoken for a while, so I don't really want to read off the first world, second world, third world writing, but I will say it is describing a first world, a second world, and a third world. I think it can be read because we know this mural was created roughly during the Void Century. That if we read it the way it's sort of set out, you can guess that the second world is the center of the mural, and is sort of like a transition phase. And I think the second world is depicted in its entirety in this image, and I believe the first world is depicted entirely on the right side of the image, and the third world is depicted entirely on the left side. And ultimately, by having the second world, you realize that all these things are just a repetition of themselves. They're all fundamentally the same. So I like to think that the second world is the entirety of the mural, but the center being a tree, very interesting. I believe that is where the final war happened, at an Adam tree of some kind. Are you of the opinion that maybe these were the final war of the Void Century, so bad that we'll claim happened. Do you think that happened at Elbath, or do you think there was another Adam tree on the world?
Well, because Elbath is the Eve tree, right?
No, the Elbath is the Adam tree.
I reckon there would have been an Eve tree.
Yes, yeah, as I brought up in the first or second episode talking about Elbath. No, I agree. I think it's only there is a lot of like Christian references to this. Every religion is touched upon in this story. But I think like just coming from that point of view, I think the whole Adam and Eve, I think the Adam tree maybe birthed life or gave whatever the planet looked like before the first world or during the first world.
What grows from trees?
Yeah. Leaves.
Fruit.
Yeah, of course. It could be that the Adam tree and the Eve tree was the creator of the devil fruits. And devil fruits can only be created when there are both an Adam and an Eve tree able to cross-germinate, however that happens, develops the fruit, and leaning into my theory that all fruits were blank slates when they're first grown, which Declan's not a fan of.
Not a fan of this theory.
Not a fan of this theory. I'm not super set on it. I expect it to be tossed aside to another theory eventually. I think Oda is gonna... I think it's the most logical way for him to write it if he doesn't really want to write a full history. If he doesn't want to put like 4 chapters aside to be like, here is the history of devil fruits, I think that is going to be his quick explanation. Oh, they're all clean slates until a will is bound to them.
Or it could just be made from a devil.
Or that. Or there is going to be a sea god of some form, which obviously the sea in Japanese, emu, backwards.
Yeah.
My personal opinion, just quickly, I actually think emu has a water-based devil fruit, and that devil fruits don't have a weakness to water, but their haki or devil fruit usage is able to negate devil fruits. She knows a way, or they know a way to negate a devil fruit, and that's what causes it to become the enemy of the sea.
Similar to how Blackbeard can just negate devil fruits.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense how he can do that with shadows.
No. Or with just pure darkness. I think it's more like you can sort of consider him a black hole in a way. Like,
how does a fruit grow with light?
Yeah.
It's just nothing but shadows. Fruit can't
grow. Yeah. Well, I think Blackbeard's fruit. Is it even the Yami Yami Nomi? We already had one god fruit, one human god fruit. Could be another one. They are identical looking fruits except for the sharpness of the swirls. That sort of suggests like there was a lot of softness about Luffy's fruit, and there's a lot of like sharpness about Blackbeard's. There could be connections there with those two fruits. It could also just be the Yami Yami, because I am of the opinion that it's probably best to not have more misnamed fruits. We've done it once.
Yeah, you can't keep doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, oh, what? This isn't the what is it called? The dark fruit?
The dark fruit.
Like, oh,
yeah.
It's not that. It's the wormhole fruit.
You're like, yeah, what? No. Yeah, no, that doesn't, I think, really fly. Or, oh, that's not the dark fruit. It's human fruit model moon god. It's like, okay, that's a little too direct. A flip. It might be. I think it more symbolizes the moon and darkness, and it's more symbolic than that. I don't think it's going to be a literal god fruit. You never know with Oda. Maybe he finds a way, and we'll be sitting here and we're like, oh my god, it was the human fruit model moon all along. He's a genius.
I just hope it doesn't get stupid by the end.
Yeah, I am starting to worry that like there may be a little bit too many reveals that change things. Like, I'd hate for there to be a reveal that like Haki is connected to devil fruits or something like that, or like.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be anything like that.
Yeah, I just feel like too many reveals, maybe might spoil the journey, because it's like, what was the point of learning things if everything we know is going to get retconned? But yeah, no. So we went little tangent there. Sorry for that.
But before we get back to track,
yeah, we're back.
Sorry for that brief little intermission. We just getting up the mural so I can look at it, because Saxon's got all his photos on his phone, and I just wanted something I could look at to go, oh, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it is quite the mural.
It's quite the mural.
I think I forget how in depth it is, and every time I look at it, I'm like, fuck.
It is. There's a lot to break down here, and I've got plenty of photos here to go with. So as I said, I think the second world depicts the entirety of the second world is depicted within this mural, and first world to third world, those comparisons are getting flipped from right to left as it's read in Japanese. So that's just how I depict the mural. Personally, tree at the center I do find interesting. We've gone with that. I'm going to start at the top right. We're looking at a moon and obviously two monsters that have counterparts within the Gorosei. I completely forgot to put down which Gorosei they were. Obviously, we don't have names for these creatures. We know one of them is a sandworm, based loosely, I would assume, off the dune worm. I think it was also pretty timely with the June release.
Earthworm.
The big... Well, it's not the Earthworm. They're not on Earth, buddy.
Earthworm Jim.
how do you know it's not Earth?
Hey, I don't.
If this is set in a world where they've just...
In a world
where people go into the ground and get little bowls and then put them on a little boat, and then a giant worm is not happy.
Yeah. Well, as I said, though, starting at the top right... Do you want to cut that bit?
Nah.
Let's cut a little bit, this.
No, it's a real podcast where we talk about real things like One Piece.
And I'll wave again. Yeah, anyway, so top right, we can see that that's obviously two of the Gorosei. That means these are monsters that were a part of likely Emu's attack against the Ancient Kingdom. We're looking at the bottom right, we see a city, an industrial city-style landscape, much like ours. We're seeing a lot of technology, a lot of gears depicted crudely, obviously, but I guess it's hard to draw technology if you don't have an understanding. This was done by children. But you can see that they are harvesting what looks like some form of energy or star mother flame, potentially. Was their power brought to them by the mother flame in some way? But I think looking at a cityscape, a modern cityscape that looks a lot like our world, you can sort of guess that either 900 years or 800 to 900 years ago during the Void Century, or even long before that, there was a more industrialized world than what currently exists on the Blue Star planet. You can see there's Zunisha, basically, right next to that, which is being fed light, which is then going back into the industrial area. So I think this could be literally more Oda speaking about the futility of consumerism and how even though you can get what you want or you can manufacture all this stuff, you're not actually ever stopping because you're always just re-consuming and rebuilding, and it's a common problem in this world. And I think we can safely say that Oda doesn't have complete love for how this world has turned out in real life, and I think he is depicting that there could be some fatal flaws to the society we live in that bottom right corner. We did mention before that there is Zunisha. We also see a boat, which I like to think is probably within Zunisha, which I like to think would likely be the Ark Noah at the bottom of Fishman Island. And we also see a ship flying and spraying lightning, which we know is similar to the Ark Maxim in Skypiea, Enel's ship, which we also know was successfully reached the moon, and Enel got to view the history that is likely being referred to in the First World. I don't think the First World is actually referring to what was happening on the land, because I think Blue Star as a planet was mainly occupied by likely giant creatures. Things like Zunisha, Ancient Giant, Oars, Continent Pullers, like these mega creatures likely inhabited the world, and the First World, where all the technology and the industrialism happened on the moon. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't think about it a lot, but that would make sense, especially because Enel did. Sorry, I keep looking at Law. Enel did meet the aliens.
Yes.
And now he's got like an army of aliens.
Well, they're not aliens; they're robots. They're automatrons. So that means he powered on the automatrons with his electricity devil fruit.
No, but I think there was an alien there as well.
No, there was just an alive automatron. No, I thought it was just like one of them that had been alive for like a while.
One that like potentially has the same body type as Emu.
Okay, yeah. Well, maybe I need to dig a little bit deeper into Enel's cover story, because, I definitely, that could be the case for sure. Do you want to pull that up? We're back. Sorry about that little intermission. So we decided to actually go through Enel's cover story, which I'm really glad I brought up the point that I think it might be the First World may have been the fairy Verth or the moon. Because this is a really interesting cover story.
So much happens.
So much happens. One little thing we noticed, there's a giant worm on the moon.
Giant worm with arms.
Massive giant worm with arms on the moon, which, again, I think there's a little debate between me and Declan. We know for a fact that there are automatons up there, the ones that get turned on.
The little soldiers.
Also the 4 little soldiers that get sent up from Karakuri Island, which is an island that I believe Vegapunk has connections to. It may have been his home island, but his home island was snowy. I'm not 100% sure. I do know there are connections to the person who made the automatrons. But we do see space pirates. Declan's opinion is that they're biological.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason for them to be little machines.
I think they maybe have been built to protect the moon and are machines. They're just more advanced versions, but I can definitely see them being biological creatures. Also referring to themselves as space pirates, they may literally just be from space.
Well, yeah, because it's not them referring to themselves, it's the title, the cover stories themselves.
Yeah, they could literally just be aliens, and hence the reason they look so goofy, even for One Piece standards. But we do see Enel turn on the city, and more automatons are made. He then finds, shockingly, another mural, which also depicts robots, Skypeans, and conveyor belts. We know this is an advanced city. I'm still just looking. After Enel, opens everything up, we find the automatons. They come from a city. They're depicted as being from a manufacturing industry. I like to think that First World, in reference to the First World in the mural, is referring to the fairy Verth or the moon.
The ancient moon people.
The
have
ancient
wings.
moon people. The Skypeans, ultimately. We know the Skypeans landed in all different places, and the idea is that they all came from the moon. We know the Lunarians, obviously their name, Luna. There's very strong chance they came from the moon. They settled up on the Grand Line, or on the Red Line, sorry. We know the Shandorans initially landed at Jaya and were sent up to Skypiea. We know the Birkins, I think, are also a sky island that is much further away. I think based off Aruj and Kaido, Birka is accessed through Elbaf and is closer to that side of the world, to like Elbaf and Wano and stuff. I may be mistaken. That may just be like a misunderstanding of the geography of the Sky Islands. It could be that as the Sky Islands, they're just floating, so they're never stagnant. I can't really speak too much, but I do like the idea that the industrialized world is the moon. What do you feel like that could be what that's referencing?
Well, possibly with the giant worm here.
Yeah.
Is working on like an industrial thing, like he's fixing something or making something. So it's you've definitely got to use that as a factor of like there is this old type of machinery. But what I'm actually intrigued by with this cover story and how that could possibly link to that, I think they used to go back to the moon all the time.
Do you think they were just back and forth 24/7 with those wings?
Yeah, those little android things, like First Lieutenant Spacey, were just catching balloons up.
Yeah, there's no boundary for atmosphere.
Like, that doesn't make sense. I know it is just a silly little manga and a silly little anime, but there is, like, things happen, they're going to be explained to why, or, like, it's not just...
It opens it so that travel to the moon is not something you need $1 billion worth of research and a ton of rocket fuel to get to, like in our world.
Yeah.
They make it very clear that, brother, you can just ride some balloons up there.
Head
like if you go to the moon, if you have a way of flying to the moon, you don't have to worry about breathing. You don't have to worry about getting through the atmosphere. You don't have to worry about any of the general space science, which I like because ultimately that gives the opportunity to the Straw Hats to be told, hey, you can go to the moon, and they can go. Will they?
Well, look, they've been to Skypea, which was, everyone was like, oh, you can't do that. You what I mean? You're a city in the clouds. Bellamy was like, none of that shit.
Yeah. Now, I've got an idea. What if this has actually just come to me this second. What if the city that Anel just turned on, what if that is the Ancient Kingdom? What if the moon is where the Ancient Kingdom is? Because Laughtale has never been referred to as the Ancient Kingdom. It seems like they're separate places. Could Laughtale just be the place that the Ancient Kingdom decided to leave their story, and the actual Ancient Kingdom was on the moon, and that city is revitalized by Enel, which gives him a very easy entrance back into the story, which I think a lot of people would like. And
he definitely has to play a part in it.
Yeah, he seems almost too powerful. He's our introduction to Haki, as Mantra with Observation Haki, one and the same. But he's our first real introduction. Obviously, you can say the retcon introduction of Shanks using Conqueror's Haki on a Sea King. Probably, like, retroactively you can say it, but I don't think that was intended.
Like, even on the mural, the moon's there.
The moon's just there.
The moon is massive.
And the worm is right next to it. And the ship that is spraying lightning, obviously also Enel sprayed lightning, is also right near the moon. So I think there's a lot of suggestion that the first world and the Ancient Kingdom had ties to the moon in a way that we don't have ties. And I guess it's really easy to hide the history of the world when no one can get to the moon. It almost feels it was impossible for there to be Sky Islands. It feels like the world government's goal was to crush people's dreams enough for them to think it was impossible to go to the moon. And that's where the Ancient Kingdom is, and that's where the real history is. The full story. It will be really interesting, what's going to come of that. It also could suggest that Pluton may be older, and the ancient weapons as a whole may be from the first world and not from the Ancient Kingdom. Because as I think I spoke about last episode, the Ancient Kingdom's name translates better to the Great Kingdom. So I think the whole ancient kingdom, ancient weapons connection may be a little bit looser than we think, just because that's like an English translation error.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So, as I said, I think the center of the mural sort of depicts the second world. I think we see Zunisha being led by what looks to be a silhouette of Emu with the crown, the short stature, being surrounded by the first world technology.
A Lunarian or a moon person, potentially?
Potentially, that as well. Yeah, we don't know. I like to personally think that Emu's form has changed since this was introduced. But I think ultimately you're seeing the Second World War depicted with Emu leading the charge with Zunisha. Zunisha was banished to walk forever. Did Zunisha betray Joy Boy and take Emu's side and then realize what happened, and Joy Boy gave it the mission of harboring a road poneglyph, because it's a road poneglyph at on Zunisha, isn't it? It's a red one.
Yeah.
So I think he was given that task as reparation for helping the world government or the 20 kingdoms fight at an Adam tree against the ancient kingdom. We then start to go on. We see some... I'm going to look at the boats first in the mural.
Can I cut you off?
Yeah, no, of course.
Do you think that thunderbolt or lightning bolt, is going anywhere?
Well, I think it's hitting the tree.
Is Frankie covering anything?
Is Frankie covering anything?
The biggest member of the crew hiding something.
There could be something behind Frankie. It feels a little disingenuous for Oda to show us so much and then still hide a part of it while doing this sort of a reveal. I don't think pictures could change. I don't think anything could really change too much. I like to think that the lightning is likely just hitting the Eve tree, and it's just depicted as hitting, or the Adam tree, sorry, and it's just depicted as hitting that tree.
Yep.
I think there's a big old space of just tree trunk in that spot. I don't think there's any art being hidden, but there's definitely the possibility. So when we get on with the boats at the bottom of the mural, bottom left, we see a familiar symbol. The dots around a circle. We've seen this in relation to Kuma. We've seen this in relation to the giants, I believe. It's a symbol that popped up within the Fishman. It's been reused and redesigned, but ultimately sort of stayed the same. Funnily enough, it sort of also looks like the world government. So there could be connections to that, with the world government having the X and Y axis with the balls at the end. There's, I think, inspiration from Emu, and maybe Emu thought, hey, let's make the design similar to their design, so people just assume that it's a relic of our own past and not a relic of an unknown history. But you just see humans. I think you could be seeing those humans depicted as the 20 kings going up against something that maybe the ancient kingdom and the 20 kings worked together and were ultimately betrayed by Emu to fight an even greater evil.
What if Emu has always been this leader of the world? They've seen some crazy shit happen 900 years ago, and they go, the only way to make sure this doesn't happen again is if there is a world government and history is...
And a full reset.
A full reset.
Okay, do you think Emu was ill-intentioned? Because I think the way Oda writes his story, I don't think the only character I can think of who was entirely ill-intentioned was Doflamingo. Now, Doflamingo is a result of Emu's actions. Do you think Emu was ill-intentioned from the beginning?
No, I don't. I can theorize, but it's all it's going to be is theories. It's just interesting to say, like, if I was leader of this ancient kingdom and someone figured out this ability to become what appears to be a giant demon, as by the mural.
Yeah.
You'd want that, and that gets resolved. You'd want to make sure this doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a little bit of a Judas moment that's going to happen in the story of Emu. I think there's going to be a lot of connection to like Jesus and the 12 apostles with how the ancient kingdom fought. But the way I'm actually reading this now, and I've only sort of come to this conclusion now, is it almost feels as if Emu was on the side of the ancient kingdom to defeat a greater good, and then maybe when greater evil, sorry, and then when the devil, the greater evil, was defeated, then Emu basically did a Judas and stabbed Joy Boy in the back. Joy Boy being an allegory for Jesus in this case. I think there's that possibility. I like to read it that way, actually, and looking at it consistently right now, it feels like that's the case. I think now's probably a good time to touch on the devil before we start to look at each individual character and who the mural is depicting. I think when you look at the devil,
the character on the far left.
What notable features does it have? Wings.
Wings.
It's black.
Yep.
Lunarian, potentially. But it's also got Loki, similar to Loki's horns. Ancient giant horns. Now, could this devil be the culmination of a Lunarian and an ancient giant being combined to make basically an unstoppable force? Like, imagine a Lunarian the size of Oz, even the size of Little Oz Jr., the havoc that would reach. And then when you look at it, Oz, the size of Oz on Thriller Bark, well, the way that Oz is designed, we see 2 of everything, while with Little Oz Jr., we see 3 of everything. Probably suggests that the continent puller Oz, I like to think maybe Onigashima,
the big skull.
The big skull. Could that be depicted, or could that be the body of the devil that is being fought here, or
Oz,
the continent puller, or Oz? This is Oz. We got oars around. We got boats. We got rowing.
I do like that because that skull has to come from somewhere.
Yeah. I don't think that skull was a bit of rock that was perfectly carved to look like a skull.
It's a bit too much work.
Kato's a pretty cool guy, though. He's got a fair few slaves. Maybe he did do that. But it also would make sense. And a continent puller, what is Wano? It's 12 islands stitched together. There's a very strong chance that Oz the continent puller, that was his last mission, was to create something with walls to avoid flooding and stitch together 12 islands. It could be that the ancient kingdom isn't on the moon, but is instead just those 12 islands combined. One of Wano. Wano as a whole is just that. But I like to think that maybe the 12 islands that were stitched together in Wano were the satellites of, like, the correspondence of the ancient kingdom being on the moon. Now, that's a lot of headcanon.
But is that why there's an ancient weapon in the depths of Wano?
That would make sense why... Yeah, and also, how do you get a weapon? It almost feels like Pluton maybe... You know, they say lying dormant, lying asleep, but could it be lying dormant as in like a volcano where it's just not active, it's not doing anything? Or are they using it more literally, more asleep literally? Is it a creature? Is it alive? Is it conscious?
Is it a
and
fishman with devil fruit abilities?
That would be interesting. It'd be interesting to lock it up for until necessary, like break glass in an emergency.
It's like when Jack was in the water.
Yes, well,
like,
we know that fishermen can live underwater even with devil fruits. We know, I think Kaido would be able to live still because he has a fish fruit. So he's not going to drown either. So I think that's why when everyone said like, oh, why doesn't Kaido just kill himself in the water? I think that was immediately, well, he's got a fish fruit, and logically he's going to be able to breathe under there. You don't really want to spend eternity or, you know, even a couple 100 years just slowly dying at the bottom of the ocean, unable to move.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of in on that. But yeah, to go back to the devil, sorry, getting distracted. To go back to that devilish creature on the far left, it's holding a sun.
Can I throw something crazy out there?
Throw it out.
Is it a sun or is it a lunar eclipse?
Ooh, it could
that
be
symbol the moon in front of the sun?
It could be symbolizing the moon in front of the sun. The day went dark. Symbology used by the child to show like that. Yeah, the world was under eclipse. That would make it so the minks were basically just had to be in their base form, but also because technically for an eclipse you need a full moon, so maybe that would allow. Yeah, maybe that'll allow the minks to have an extended Sulong form to assist in this fight. So that would add some extra drama from a writing perspective.
Because I always assumed it was the sun, but why is it two different colours?
Well, yeah, I depict it as the mother flame.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I say it. I think it's holding the power of the sun in its palm, which is what the mother flame is.
All right, Doc Ock.
Well, I'm going to go crazy and start killing people.
Power of the sun in the palm of my hands.
No, I kind of figured because I don't think the mural's going to repeat things. So I see it as the mother flames on the right hand side. And that's what they're grabbing.
Okay.
But actually, sorry, now that we're looking at it again, the people are holding the balls of energy.
Mm-hmm.
They're also in the sky.
Yes.
Above the moon and above
the devil as well. I also noticed that while you were speaking.
Look at us.
So you think we could go with the far right being the mother flame? Maybe what is being held by the miners is the original energy source that they lacked in the ancient kingdom that caused them to develop the mother flame, and then that mother flame was taken possession by a devilish creature. And then maybe what's happened is little Joy Boy, which is depicted with, definitely the sun god Nika is depicted in this. Also with the shield with that same symbol. We see that. We also see, I'm just going to run through the rest of the characters. We see a giant with a hat on and horns that go directly out. I think we can
long hair.
And long hair. We can probably safely assume that is depicting the equivalent of Loki now. We also see the sun god Nika, whether that's first world, second world, or depicting Luffy.
Full ornament huggy.
Yes, either that or I don't know, that could just be the art style of this. We see a whale. We can probably assume that is an island whale. We do also see rain above that whale, so I don't know what that could be symbolizing. I think that could be symbolizing some power of island whales that we maybe don't know. But we know there's an island whale that's very important to the early part of the story in Laboon. We see what looks to be like a Lunarian fighting with the ancient kingdom, or with the sun god Nika against the devil flying in. We see a massive robot, which we can easily presume is going to be Frankie, inevitably, but that is Emmett, as we actually know.
They've both got horns.
They both got horns. Frankie is obviously teeing up, and his character is more and more looking like an ancient robot, like what Emmett looks like. So we know Emmett was on the side of Joy Boy. We know he had connections to the ancient kingdom. We know Frankie is inevitably going to look somewhat like a giant robot.
Yeah,
that's his goal.
Who's above Emmett?
Above Emmett?
Yeah.
Well, that to me looks like a mink in Sulong form. Which, to go back to your lunar eclipse, the moon would have to be in full moon. So I think that's why it's sort of shaded white, or not shaded at all, I should say, is because it is in Sulong form. I think when you look further down, we see a very small tontata next to a mermaid with a crown, Shirahoshi. That is likely, which ancient weapon is Shirahoshi? Poseidon. Duh. So that is likely depicting Poseidon.
giant fish under her, so sea creatures.
Now, what do you think that little creature in between Poseidon and the other large... Well, the other, I assume, is just a regular giant. Next to Poseidon, that will just be a regular giant, like Hyrule or Dorian Brody.
I think it could just be another mink.
Do you think it could be another mink? Or do you remember recently they spoke about a half race of Dondatas?
Oh,
Could that be half mink, half tontata?
could be.
Or half something, half tontata? We're just seeing a regular fish, which is fun. That's a kid's drawing, a kid's depiction. What was Luffy's first ever depiction of a fish, man? It's just a fish with legs. Maybe this kid's just like, oh, I didn't know they could have legs.
Sea creature.
Could also just be a sea creature. Could be them depicting a sea king or something.
Look at the size of that fish compared to like the size of the whale.
Yeah, and the size of the boats and stuff. So that could just be a sea king there. You remember the big goldfish that Usopp landed on the poo and thought it was so big it was an island that he told a story about and then inevitably did? Could just be that massive goldfish.
Could be.
We do see some what looks like humans in spacesuits going towards the group fighting the devil. They're facing the same direction of the devil, which says they're on the same side of the devil, which means they had some form of military support.
Or there was just a bunch of evil druids who summoned the devil.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe this is a moment where
Cult.
Yeah, they've been summoned to this world. We saw a cult summon the undead already in the story.
Yeah.
And then he became a superstar. Little Soul King Brook was summoned with a summoning circle that they use for the Holy Knights, that same summoning circle.
Was there another summoning circle recently?
Holy Knights was the most recent, like Shamrock. I don't think there's been another. There was reference to it last week or maybe 1144 with Nami explaining that the summoning circle was there to Jarul.
Yeah.
But I don't think there has been another use of a summoning circle just yet. But yeah, I think we've gone through and identified everything on there and who is the equivalent.
Missed the boat with the samurai.
The boat with the samurai. Oh, so there is a boat with a samurai.
one.
Yes, thank you.
They got the hair tied up, the big sword.
You think that is likely just a reference to the people of Wano?
Yeah.
The culture of Wano?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good estimation. Like, yeah.
And just a bunch of other pirate ships.
Just a bunch of other pirate ships, which I just depict as humans fighting against this creature. Now, what I like to think is, to go back to my previous theory on Emu being a Judas-like creature, this is telling the story of Emu inevitably becoming the devil. Now, I actually really liked your point with it being that Emu was never ill-intended initially. I like to think that Emu, with the crown, may have been in control and Joy Boy was merely a pirate, which we know he was the first ever pirate. He didn't want to be a part of society. Emu may have been the leader of the ancient kingdom. And then elected the help of Joy Boy and his merry band of pirates to take down a greater evil that Emu inevitably will turn into. I don't know if Emu's betrayal of Joy Boy was based on potentially jealousy with Vivi D. Nefertari, or Lily, sorry, Lily Nefertari D. Lily. That could be the jealousy side. They loved Lily. Lily betrayed them by joining Joy Boy's crew after the war had happened, and Emu's retaliation to that was to then take out Joy Boy and become enemies of the Will of D and label the Will of D as devils and evil, when in reality he's getting retaliation for some petty things, which I think would be really good characterization, because Emu is depicted as relatively small. Their voice in the English dub is a lot easier to see. It's definitely mashed together, a man and a boy and a girl's voice, but they're both quite high pitch. I think there's a very strong chance that Emu was an immature leader who betrayed Joy Boy, and Joy Boy being the holder of the Nika fruit, betrayed them in order to acquiesce their love for Lily. Hence the reason stabs the photo. You know, obviously they could choose between Blackbeard being a threat or Luffy being a threat, but instead they're like, no, I actually think Vivi is the person that like they stab down on. I personally like to think that Emu is also carrying the body of Lily, and we're gonna see that Emu was a boy in the ancient kingdom and then took Lily's body because it was like a, if you won't be with me, I'll make you be with me.
Why else hide their face?
Exactly. Why
Same
else
as
hide?
Rocksteady's back.
Yes.
Why are we hiding it?
Why are we hiding it at this point? There's ultimately really no... If it's a new character design, there is no reason to hide to silhouette characters anymore.
We saw the Gorosei straight away.
How quickly did we go from Figerland silhouette to Figerland?
Yeah.
How quickly did we go from Shamrock back of the head to just Shamrock getting introduced? These are happening very quickly now. So I think the only silhouettes are going to be from characters that have meaning behind their design or have connections to a character who already exists. And my personal opinion is that will be Vivi being the identical ancestor of Lily. It could very well be wrong. It would very easily be wrong. But I do also feel, there's no point hiding it.
But you just have it a big... Yeah, 'cause it would be so stupid to just have it be a silhouette for so long, and then it just appears and it's some dude.
The only other silhouette I can...
Dr. Hill look.
Hero look. Yeah, no, it'd be sick. It's actually... Emu's actually Dr. Hero look. Flipping that whole script. No, the only one I can sort of think that would be funny is... Do you remember the adopted child who became the king of the Goa Kingdom, the adopted Sabo's adopted brother, and he tries to sit on the throne?
Yeah.
I think the only other character silhouette that would be like, or reveal for Emu that would be maybe more funny than Lily would be if he looks exactly like that kid does, and is just like a spoiled brat with the eternal youth surgery that the law can do, or law's fruit can do. I think that's the only other option other than it looking like Lily that I can think Oda would do and have a reason to keep it hidden for this long, because it'll be funny. It'll be a funny gag. Sabo opens up Emu's hood, or Luffy opens up Emu's hood, and Sabo's there and it's like, fuck, that's my adopted brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the adopted brother's now the king of, or a prince of Goa Kingdom, went to the Reverie, tried to sit on the throne. Like, there's a lot of connections to that being the sort of person and the sort of leader that Emu could have been, and hence the reason jealousy drove them to wipe out the people that saved the world from a calamity, which is depicting the devil, and the circular nature of history, and a big part of this history being First World, Second World, Third World, is that it is a circle. This is ultimately depicting the progression of Emu's life from leader to devil. That's how I like to interpret it as we've gone on.
So you're seeing it as the devil is Emu and that little crown is Emu?
Yes, that is the beginning of Emu and the end of Emu. In the beginning, he backs Joy Boy, and at the end, he is taken down by Joy Boy, which ends up being Luffy. Because I don't think Luffy and Joy Boy are the same person.
No.
I don't think Joy Boy is a title. I think Joy Boy is a person who had the sun god Nika fruit. I think the connection between Joy Boy and Luffy starts and stops at the sun god Nika fruit and the D initial. I don't think there is anything beyond them. I'm not a prophecy. I'm not a fate guy. I don't think it's going to be Monkey D, Joy Boy. I don't think it's going to be like anything like that. I think fate and prophecy are going to play less into this than we think. I think Oda's just setting it up to be a subversion of that trope.
Yeah. Because I hate that trope.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people will agree that that was one of the tropes that maybe ruined Naruto's ending. I personally didn't hate it during Naruto. It felt a little more set up than fans give it credit for. But I also don't want to see it again, especially when Naruto and One Piece shared the limelight for so long. If Naruto ends first and then One Piece basically does the same trope as Naruto to end the series, that's not going to fly with a lot of fans, I don't think. A lot of people are going to be disappointed in that as an ending.
Yeah. Well, fucking, it's going to ruin the podcast.
Yeah, it would. Well, hey, look, maybe we'll sit here and we'll be like, Oda did it 10 out of 10 and it was actually great. And who knew someone could write a trope and subvert it this much? Maybe we talk like that, but maybe we don't. I think we've now spoken pretty heavily about what's actually being depicted in the image. Would you like to read each sentence and we can just sort of break it down from there?
Yeah. Well,
starting on the first
world. Flames engulfed the lands, and humans succumbed to their desires.
So we think flames engulfed the land is probably quite literal, especially when you see at the bottom of the mural, flames engulfing the land. Succumb to their desires. Do you think that could be a reference to whatever they're manufacturing?
Oh, yeah, potentially. Do we also think the perimeter of the base, is that flames?
That's flames, in my opinion. I think that's drawn as flames because we can see the rocks in the foreground and then you get flames in the foreground of the mural. I think the depth in this mural is actually quite important. I think with the city being in the foreground and then the worm and bird being in the tree being in the furthest part of the background, it looks like Emu may be behind it. I think it feels almost like the first world is closer to the foreground and everything else is sort of like background to that. But yeah, do you think when Oda says humans succumb to their deepest desires, could this be a reference to real life consumerism and like an allegory for hyper-consumerism that exists under capitalism, which I think we can safely say he's not the biggest fan of?
It would be fun for that to be the thing.
Yeah. I think Oda's a lot more of an intelligent and political writer than a lot of people give him credit for.
Yeah.
So I think there is a very strong chance. He's a massive fan of like Che Guevara and stuff. The wind grammar, that's a reference to Che's ship that he used to travel on.
Is it?
Yes.
Cool.
Obviously Dragon, a revolutionary, and is depicted as the moral good in the story. He's based off like Che Guevara and, even there's a little bit of Fidel Castro about him. These people weren't necessarily great people, but they looked pretty badly through history and reality. And if Oda looks up to those people, I think this could be a story depicting that you don't need to listen to history because reality tends to show that good people are banished as bad or labeled as bad.
So yeah, humans succumb to their desires, touching the forbidden sun.
Okay, so that's one sentence.
Yeah.
We can suggest the forbidden sun as the mother flame, which again, manufacturing, they touched the mother flame. They kept getting this energy. They probably did too much with it.
The enslaved prayed, and the sun god appeared.
Yeah, you think that's pretty literal? Yeah. I think that's a pretty literal depiction. Like, people have been praying for the sun god to arrive, and here comes Luffy. Again, it comes back to desire and everything.
The earth god was enraged. Emu?
Potentially.
And together with the serpent of infernal flames.
Could it be that the earth god is the bird and the flames of like the earth god and the serpent of infernal flames. Do you think that is the bird and?
It could be. That's why they're doing like a super attack.
Yeah.
So,
Infernal.
shrouded the world in death and darkness. They would never meet again.
Okay, so that's
I'll say that all again because I think I broke that up a few times in a bit odd ways. The earth god was enraged, and together with the serpent of infernal flames, shrouded the world in death and darkness. They would never meet again.
Okay, actually, could the earth god be the far left evil calamity that we were talking about, and on the far right be the serpent of infernal flames, and the bird is just is a part? Could the bird be what's under Wano?
Oh yeah.
Could the bird be? Yeah, that I like that. Maybe the idea, because an earth god
enraged by the sun god.
Yeah. Well, the sun god appearing, and who is the sun god fighting in this mural?
What if it isn't sun god Nika?
It's a different sun god.
What if it's sun god Slayer? Like, what if there's just something missing? Because there is a monster there, the devil, holding what appears to be a sun. You've got a sun god. If you're a sun god,
liberation and destruction destroyed the sun god.
The sun god destroyed the earth god.
Well, so are you saying that that Nika, the creature of human fruit model Nika, isn't the sun god, but is instead taken that title of sun god by killing the sun god? Or do you think the devilish creature holding the sun, let's just say, that's the earth god, and Nika is... Yeah.
Well, if the sun god appears, earth god becomes enraged.
So maybe
there's only a few things on here that look enraged.
Yeah, well, the devilish creature on the left. I think it's either the devilish creature on the left or the bird down the middle is the earth god, and the snake is the serpent is clearly the serpent. The only serpent depicted on this is going to be what that's referring to.
But then they would never meet again. So is that in relation to the sun god and earth god, or is that?
That's a really interesting idea. Well, that may be what I alluded to with the fact that I think maybe the left is actually depicting, is more prophecy related, because I'm looking at that left side, never meet again. They're on opposite sides of the mural. It could be that they met initially and then weren't together, were fighting separately during the Second World, and then during the Third World they inevitably fight together, because we know the Gorosei has one of those. The Gorosei, one of them is a giant serpent. Yeah, okay. I think that back half reads a lot more vaguely. I think the first part, it's pretty literal. I think the flames did engulf the land, and I think humans succumbed to their desire by touching what is the forbidden sun.
Humans got greedy.
Mother flame. They got greedy. They overconsumed, and
the slaves weren't happy.
Which, shocker, no one wants to be a slave.
So is the sun god someone that the enslaved prayed?
Well, I think the sun god is literally Nika, because he is
liberator.
the warrior of liberation.
Yeah.
He's the warrior of liberation and destruction. Without destruction, you can't have true revolution. Sometimes you need to break it all down to build it back up. I think the issue is it was built up in Emu's image and not in Joy Boy's image of what the world should be. I think Joy Boy was likely a lot more, being a warrior of liberation, wanted freedom for all, which I think is a good thing. But that back half reads a little bit more vaguely. I think the earth god could be depicted multiple places in this situation. I think the serpent is depicted very obviously.
Fuck. Sorry. Look at the wings on the devil.
Yep.
Look at the wings on the bird.
On the bird.
Look at the horns of the bird.
Yes, okay,
The horns
you're
of the
dead
devil.
right.
Look
Could
at
it
the
be...
teeth on the bird. Look at the teeth of the devil.
Could it be the never meet again? It means the bird fought the worm and then inevitably became the devil.
What it's devil fruit.
Oh, okay.
Zoan type.
Should we move on to the second world?
Breath stripped within the void.
Stirred.
Oh, it's 2 R's. Yeah, take 2.
It's pretty hard to read.
Breath stirred within the void, and the forest god sent forth demons.
Well,
Okay.
the void. So we know they're referring to the time frame being the 900 to 800 year void century.
What if the bird is the earth god or the forest god?
The forest god sent forth demons. Well, could it be that the forest god on the far left sent off demons, the bird and the worm, and those demons were also sent off by Emu? And I think, to go back to what I said, this is depicting the story of Emu in the way history repeats itself, becoming the earth god, I guess, and then the forest god being
So sun god,
bird.
earth god, forest god, which I think were all talked about in Skypiea.
in Skypiea. Yes, they were at the altar.
So the sun did nothing but spread the fires of war.
So I think this comes to
Liberation.
the warrior of destruction, because a big part of Elbaf right now, as we know, is the conversation between Nika. Is it a warrior of destruction or a warrior of liberation? Some depict it as destruction, some depict it as liberation. I think there's a strong chance that maybe Joyboy wasn't as nice a fella, and the second world brought upon, or the void century brought upon maybe an idea that the sun god Nika was a warrior of destruction and not a warrior of liberation.
Because the kids are afraid of Nika.
Afraid of Nika, yeah.
Whereas Jewelry, Bonnie, and Kuma, that race of people.
Yeah, the Buccaneers.
Sorry, the Buccaneers praise Nika.
Praise on Nika as the warrior of liberation, and slaves also do. So,
But again, if you were the ruler of some kingdom,
yeah,
had slaves, and your slaves were liberated by this thing, you'd go, that thing's a nightmare. But the people free would be like, that's our hero.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Do you think Elbaf were on the side of the 20 Kingdom then?
It's a good chance.
Could Elbaf have been like one of those groups that sort of maybe took the side of the 20 Kingdoms regretfully and did sort of an alabaster where they were like, all right, we're going to send our monarch back.
Could be why some of the leaders in Elbaf are just so weird.
Yeah, and like there's
Jarul, King Harold.
Well, we know there's connections to CP0, so maybe Elbaf has deeper connections to the world government than we've ever given credit for, and it's the citizens of Elbaf that are sort of brainwashed to believe it is either
What was that?
destruction or liberation. So I think, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that this could spell signs that Elbaf maybe is not as neutral and secular a group of people as it's depicted for the last 800 years.
Yeah, and we've got giants in the Marines.
We've got giants in the Marines, dead right. I haven't seen any marine minks.
No. Or
Fishmen?
Marine tontatas?
No tontatas and fishmen. So we've got mainly the most humanoid ones.
We've had fishmen on pirate crews.
Yep. We've had fishmen just in regular life.
But nothing... Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
But I don't think there's ever been a fisherman marine. Now, we're going to fact check that off the camera, and if there is, we'll put something up
should we do
now.
that now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we've looked that one up.
We're back.
We've looked that one up. No, there are no fishermen in the Marines.
Interesting.
But there are giants. Even though the 2 giants we know of were there through manipulation, because they were told...
there's a bunch of giants in Marineford.
Yeah, those ones are... Oh, no, yeah, you're right. No, I'm thinking of the ones at Ina's Lobby. They're Dorian Brogie's guys. Goldberg. Funnily enough. It was one of those. But yes, no, you're right. There are other giants at the... So, giants have a deeper connection to the Marines and the world government than maybe Elbath depicts. Elbath, it seems like, it's spoken about as a secular nation.
Yeah.
One you can't enter unless you are a giant.
It's easy to say that.
Yeah. It's certainly easy to say that. And you're not going to have civilians, and most pirates aren't going to go there because, one, most pirates don't make it to the New World.
And they've heard how hard it is
And
to
two,
get there.
Yeah, they've heard how hard it is to get in.
Like, well, not going to go there then.
From the outside, it looks like there's barely anywhere to dock. The only way they were able to get onto the cloud is by using the rainbow, which means you have to have access somehow. Like, it's not like free access.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're onto something with that as well. I think you're really, really onto something there. With the giants maybe being a little bit more evil historically than we think.
Yeah.
Amazing.
What were we talking about?
Okay, so
Back to the second world.
Yeah, the sun.
The sun did nothing but spread the fires of war.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I know that. The people of... So this is where things, for me, get very confusing. The people of the half moon dreamed. The people of the full moon dreamed.
People of the half moon, I think that's referring to the Declan.
So, as in, like, half a moon, a crescent moon, looks like a D?
Yep. And then the people of the full moon, which maybe the full moon could be referring to the ancient kingdom, hence the dots around a circular. Could that be like a moon reference piece or something? I don't know who the people with the full moon, the people of the full moon are, but I imagine they're depicted somewhere on here, and the only clan I could think of are the people with literal circles on there as their symbol. That one is really confusing. Do you think the half moon dreamed do you think that's referring to the D clan?
I don't know. Did you say my name?
The D clan?
Let's go to this image here of look at it. Look at that image there. Of I think it's an SBS of Blackbeard as a child.
Yes, boy. Yes.
Dreaming of the moon, or not dreaming.
No. Looking at the moon because he can't sleep.
Yeah. Is he looking at it, or is he thinking about it?
No, he can't sleep, so he's sitting under the moon because he can't sleep.
Surely there's something there.
People of the full moon. Minx.
Oh. People of the full moon dreamed. Yeah.
Humans slew the sun and became gods, Emu and the 20 kings, destroying the sun god Nika, aka Joy Boy.
Humans becoming gods.
And became gods. Became gods. Became gods. The celestial dragons.
Fuck.
And the sea god raged. Now,
they would never meet again.
They would never meet again. They never meet again really gets to me. I don't understand that part of any of them. And then, before we get into that, I think "and the sea god raged" is reference to Emu destroying. Maybe Emu. I think there is
resistance against Emu.
Was there a full resistance against Emu? Was it, like I said initially, that the world took on the original Earth God? That era ended. Emu took over this next era, doing a Judas and taking out Joy Boy, and maybe getting a sea-related devil fruit and becoming the sea god. Which, like I said before, I like to think Emu may have powers that affect the sea. I think that at least it's logical if you just flip the name, like narratively.
Yeah.
They would never meet again. So I think they never meet again maybe could just be saying like that was the end of this era and it was a new era
or
after these wars.
Can I say humans slew the sun, and humans became gods. And because of that, the sea god was enraged. Raged. They never meet again. As in the humans that became gods never meet the sea.
They're on the red line. They're at the highest point.
I see it more as the humans became gods through devil fruits. Maybe that's what they were trying to do, is become gods to fight off.
So you think gods is referring to devil fruits and not the celestial dragons, like the literal transition from kings to celestial dragons who name themselves gods?
And I think that's why there's such a distinction between celestial dragons, is to be like, no, they're the real gods. But the real gods are the devil fruits.
The real gods are within devil fruits, yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. That's a really interesting...
Because of humans doing that...
idea.
The real sea god was pissed off because he's like, what's of all these fake gods?
Yes. Okay.
And because of that, he was like, all right, you'll never meet the sea again.
All right. I really like that idea. That's really interesting. Yeah, definitely. No, like, this is the best part about the speculation, isn't it? Like,
so good because we don't know.
Different ideas. Yeah, in my understanding of that, it would be humans, aka the 20 kings, slew the sun god Nika and became the celestial dragon.
The CDs.
The sea god raged. I think that could be like a petty rage from Emu, or that could be a literal sea god just went bonkers and got real angry at everyone. I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to delve into, and I can't wait for us to learn more. And we're going to just rush into that third world.
You want to get to the end of that, don't you?
I would love to get into the end of it.
In chaos, there is void. The troubled shadow remembers the promised day and hears the voice of the fractured moon.
See, I think...
That's got Blackbeard written all over it.
Ooh, okay. Interesting. In chaos, there is void. The troubled shadow remembers the promised day. Now,
Troubled shadow. There's a troubled boy.
Troubled boy. Yes, actually, that is a really good reference to Blackbeard. And here's the voice of the fractured moon. It could definitely...
Here's the photo of young Blackbeard again.
In front of a crescent moon. Yep.
Come on now.
No, that could definitely be referring to...
Here's the voice of the fractured moon.
Yeah, that could definitely be referring to Blackbeard. It could also just be referring to all people as... Yeah, no, go.
Why do you think Blackbeard can't sleep? It's because the moon's there at night. What would happen if you just heard the voice of a fractured moon? You'd be able to sleep.
So you reckon he's forced to stay up because he has the voice of all things and can hear the moon?
Here's the voice of the fractured moon.
I think that is the first time I've ever heard anyone say that. Yep. I really like that idea. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to refute. I think there's a lot of chance that this could just be referring to the will of D again, the fractured moon, the half moon. I think this could also be referring, but Marshall D teach. It's not like Blackbeard isn't a part of this clan, so
No.
I think you're connecting some dots there.
Come on now.
Maybe the will of D is
be
the
hosting the show
ability
soon.
to hear the moon. What if
Yeah.
the will of D is the voice of all things, and the people who know how to use it the best, probably enhanced by their observation hierarchy, can hear the moon and can maybe hear the city on the moon and can hear the history in the same way Luffy and Roger can hear from the poneglyph. No, that's really interesting. So next he goes, the sun god dances and laughs. I think that's just Luffy having a bit of fun. And
that would piss you off and that would make you hate the sun god.
It would. Leading the world to its end. So I think this is literal. I think this is Luffy is going to laugh and dance his way to ending the world as we know it.
That's how he fights now.
That's how he fights. And I love Gear 5 so much. I don't think this is the last gear. How many gears in a car?
Oh, he's going to reverse.
6 total. Yeah, sure. I don't know. Are there actually only 5 gears? I thought there were 6.
It depends on the car.
Okay. Well, hey, look.
What does your Gets have?
Automatic.
Oh, yes. Wait, hold on, let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, reverse.
Okay. 6.
But some have 6.
Some have 6. All right. Well, I'm using that Some have 6. I think there may be a gear 6.
Don't get me started on trucks.
They've got no gears.
There's so many.
They have 37.
I think that's actually close. Tractors also have a lot of gears.
Yeah. All right, we're not talking about gears here, buddy. But past this. But yeah, the sun god will return once more, and a new dawn will arrive. Surely this time they will meet again. Who do you think they're saying will meet again? Do you think this could be a reference to the Declan combining?
Leading the world to its end, the sun will return once more, and a new day will arrive. Surely this time they will meet again.
I think I want to just quickly go, they would never meet again, they would never meet again, they will meet again. I think what this is saying is that after each great war, someone dies on one of the sides, and they will never meet again. Then the second war is a different side. I think the first war was potentially the serpent and the earth god versus the enslaved who prayed for sun god Nika. So it'll be Nika versus the serpent and the earth god. And then the second world was forest god who sent forth demons of a different kind, which could be referring to devil fruits. That could have been the birth of devil fruits.
Demon.
But the sun did nothing but spread the fires of war, so the sun god had to fight again. That fight ended in a way where neither party would meet again. In this time, the sun god is back, and if we go off the idea that Emu is from the Void Century, they are meeting again, although it's not Joy Boy and Emu, but it is Sun God Nigger. It is the person carrying on the will of Joy Boy who meets Emu again.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Cough, sneeze. I don't know. This one's the most confusing to me. So, what I want to know, was it explained where these are said? Like, are these on the mural? Or is this what's been given to us by this narrator?
No, so this is given to us by the narrator, I believe. Typically when Oda draws narrator lore history, he draws it in a book. So I think it is the history that the narrator is saying, but I think this may be words from Ripley, potentially. I think it's conveyed to Frankie. Do you think it's conveyed to Frankie, or do you think it's just for the fans?
I think that's just for the fans.
Yeah,
I think
that
the
would make
third world
sense.
could be the one we're in now.
Yes, I absolutely believe the third world is our current world. I personally think the second world is the Void Century, and I personally think the first world is the moon coming, and the transition from the Sky Island people, or the winged races coming from the moon to the earth.
We have two winged races.
We have 3.
3.
Shandorans, Birkins, Lunarians, maybe another one even. Skypans 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I like to imagine that the first world was when the blue star planet was occupied mainly by giant creatures. I think that's where you're going to get ancient giants from. I think that's where you get creatures like Zunisha. I think you get creatures like even bigger sea kings and
those 3 interesting fellas that were just...
Those 3 interesting fellas in the Florian Triangle.
Were they in the manga?
Yeah. No, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Those silhouettes still yet to be explained, but that would be a great example of colossal creatures that roamed the blue star planet, the One Piece planet, for when the winged races came down to Earth. So I like to think, winged races come to Earth, first world, second world is the Void Century, third world is our current world. It almost feels redundant to read past and here's the voice of the Fraction Moon, because I think that second paragraph, the sun god dances and laughs, leading the world to the end, the sun will return once more, A new dawn will arrive. Surely this time they will meet again. I think that is literally describing the end of the series. I think that is just being like, Luffy's going to win. Surely this time, they'll meet again. But basically what Oda is saying in this is Luffy's going to win. And then beyond that, maybe they lead again. Or meet again.
Or could that be the red line separating the seas?
Could this be a reference to the seas meeting again? Could this all be a reference to the seas meeting again? First world.
What, Sanji's dream?
Flooding. Yeah, crazy. All blue. All blue. Crazy. Actually, you've just set me up here. First world.
And this is the Mocktown podcast.
Listen
to us each week.
Baby.
We're so good.
First world comes down. The earth is primarily land. It's continental. Mm-hmm. Hence the reason these colossal creatures are born. It's continental. It gets flooded. The seas are separated, maybe, then, by the Grand Line. Then, the Red Line is resurrected in Second World, or other way around. It could be Red Line first, Grand Line second, Grand Line first, Red Line second. Maybe I actually probably go for the former and go Red Line first. Mm-hmm. That feels like more ancient thing. But maybe what happened was the Fairyverse up in the moon, the winged races develop the ancient weapons. They come down and they go, hey, if we start shooting these weapons on these colossal creatures, ancient giants, creatures like Tsunishas, Sea Kings, we're going to flood the world. They create the Red Line. They live on top of the Red Line. The Lunarians live on top of the Red Line. Then the Lunarians are taken off the Red Line during the Void Century and replaced with the Celestial Dragons. Now, what we'll meet again is all the seas, because Luffy will destroy the Red Line, creating the All Blue and mixing the seas again. They all meet again. And we end the episode there.
Oh, yeah?
I'm happy with it if you are.
I mean, I just had a crazy thought.
Yeah, go.
What if the Celestial Dragons used to be slaves?
I think there's a very strong chance of that, but I am going to refute that with the 20 kings are the Celestial Dragons. So they were probably monarchs in their era too. And they own slaves, so you'd think if they wouldn't have built theirs.
Or just turned so evil.
They wouldn't have. Yeah, but I think you morally at the start you wouldn't have built, if they were slaves, they wouldn't have built Merigeois with slaves. Being needed, which so many parts of Merigeois need slaves to manufacture them, like the conveyor belt.
Yeah, but what if they turned to like their old lords into their slaves, and then they got to a point so far down the line where they just forgot
that they were slaves initially? Yeah. That's a really good point. Because,
like, say if I was a slave and somehow it got flipped and my owner was now my slave, I'd be like, bro, your kid's gonna be my slaves as well. Fuck you.
Yeah.
And that just boom, rinse, recycle, repeat.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, no, I'm all for that.
I just think because of the if the Lunarians used to be on the Red Line and now that's where the CDs are.
Yep.
I don't know. It just feels like where does that come from?
But I think we can pretty safely say now that they would never meet again. Maybe a reference to seas. Maybe in the first one it's a reference to the seas. Maybe in the second one it's a reference to Emu and Joy Boy.
Yeah, but look at the first world. If the enslaved prayed and the sun god appeared, how are they still slaves?
Well,
not saying that the sun god will just fix it all, but...
Well, I think that's the thing. I think he probably liberated them until the second world.
Yeah.
Could you almost read this as not First World, Second World, Third World, but First World War, Second World War, Third World War? And in reality, it's actually referring to the climax of hundreds of years of tension between differing factions.
Yeah.
And I think one of the they would never meet again could be referencing a interpersonal relationship, but I do believe that one of them is referencing the creation of the separation of the seas and the flooding of the world is being referenced, and the flooding of the world and the separation of the seas that subsequently happened are referenced in They Would Never Meet Again, and then they will meet again. I think is a reference to X marks the spot, the Grand Line, and the Red Line are destroyed, and all the seas live together. And maybe the All Blue will be the Grand Line will become what the All Blue is. Once the calm belts have like sort of flooded into the All Blue, or into the Grand Line, the islands and the strip of water that occupies the Grand Line will ultimately become the All Blue.
Because surely we are going to get everyone's dream.
100%. The whole crew is getting their dream. You're getting Zoro's going to become the world's greatest swordsman. Luffy's going to become the Pirate King. Sanji's going to get the All Blue. Nami's going to map the whole world. Certainly a lot easier without the Grand Line and the Red Line in the way. Chopper's going to cure every disease, because that's something you can just sort of do in an epilogue and be like, and 20 years later, Chopper cured every disease. And you're like, all right, cool. He studied for 20 years. Cool. Brook is going to meet Laboon. How do you get to the other side of the Red Line from the... You still got to cross the Red Line to get to Laboon, to get to Reverse Mountain. It's pretty easy. How do you get up Reverse Mountain? There's 4 streams, and then one that goes into the Grand Line. Those 4 streams, something at the center, that's where Luffy destroys the planet. Or the Red Line, sorry. That's sort of like the X within the greater X of the whole planet.
X marks the spot.
X marks the spot. I mean, notorious in pirate culture, or like, you know, in modern depictions of pirates, the term X marks the spot, very common, never shown up in the story.
Yeah,
so,
true.
I think it's going to happen somewhere in the same way that Oda is saving some pirate tropes, aka
Eye patch.
He's saving that. X marks the spot. He's saving that. Whether X marks the spot is going to be... Like, we know the poneglyphs give coordinations. And that X marks the spot literally for Laugh Tale. Because we know you're going to get 4 coordinations, and where those 4 coordinations meet is where Laugh Tale is. It's the only way to find it. Could also be that he uses it twice, and the second time being the Red Line and the Grand Line, those 2 axes crossing, and that being a place of, you know, like meeting where the All Blue is created. What is Frankie's dream? Oh, Frankie, to get to the end of the Grand Line. That's going to be the first dream that exists. Robin's dream, learn the true history. That's going to happen second. Like, we're basically going to get Frankie, Robin, and Luffy's dream all happen simultaneously. Luffy becomes a Pirate King because he gets the Laugh Tale. Robin gets to experience, find out what's on Laugh Tale. Frankie gets to get his ship to Laugh Tale.
Well, I feel like Zoro's could happen any time.
Zoro's could happen at any time at this point.
Because Buggy said he's like, we're going for the One Piece.
Yeah, we're going for... I think Zoro's will happen before... I think there is going to be a world government war, which is going to wage probably next arc, in the same way like Marineford sort of happened. There'll be a Marineford 2.0, world government versus, you know, Luffy and the rest of whatever pirates choose whichever side.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you're going to see Blackbeard stay out of that conflict, or maybe take advantage of it in another way.
That's what he does.
And I think you're going to see Buggy do something similar. I think you're going to see Shanks probably be a part of the conflict a little bit more, and that's going to be really a reuniting moment for Luffy and Shanks. And then beyond that, you're going to see a pirate war. I think we're going to get back-to-back war arcs. And I think the pirate war will either happen on Lodestar or somewhere near the One Piece.
Yeah.
Could also happen on Hachinosu. Pirate Island. Perfect place to have a pirate war. Plus, you've got a character who who is the island. So you almost don't want to take away one of Blackbeard's crewmates as a fight. So I think there is also a very strong chance that end of series sort of pirate war happens on Hachinosu, but I think it happens after the world government is taken out.
Do you think after Elbaf... Sorry, I know you wanted to end...
No, that's fine. I'm happy to go.
That's what we do at Mocktown. We just keep
keep going until we stop.
Do you think Luffy would step in to save Garp?
Depends on the situation. So yes,
Blackbeard's captured Garp.
you could.
That's the situation.
No, I know. No, I know the physical situation. I think it's dependent on. I don't think Luffy goes out of his way to Hachinosu to save Garp.
Or it gets back to them that Pudding has been taken and Garp. Would Kobe contact Luffy?
Okay, then I think if that happens, it's more realistic that maybe we go to Hachinosu after Elbaf, then get the One Piece, then defeat the world government.
Does Garp join the King of the Pirate Crew?
I don't think he joins the crew, but I think he becomes a law-like character where he does leave. Like, we already know that Kobe has left the Marines. I think attachment to the Marines is a lot smaller than it used to be. I think it's a lot smaller than it used to be.
Has it been said that Sword is its own thing?
So Sword
Doesn't make sense.
So the way Sword works is you formally resign from the Navy, but you continue working for the Navy, or as the reason all their like outfits aren't full Navy outfits is because they've taken like inspiration from the Navy, but they're not the Navy. They are Sword. They are an independent group, an independent faction of former Marines who have left the Marines but still follow the tenets of anti-piracy, world government control. Basically the Marine tenets, they just don't do it under Akainu. I think they personally probably do it under Aokiji. You know, what would make more sense? Like, Aokiji just leaves because he's like, oh, I'm not the boss. Or Akainu becomes the boss and then says, hey, Aokiji, take over Sword for me. So Akainu has someone, a faction separate to the world government control, because Akainu does not seem too pleased by the Gorosei.
No.
Or the Celestial Dragons. He doesn't seem to have a lot of respect. He doesn't seem to have a lot of time for them. I think there is a really strong chance that Aokiji and Akainu are actually really quite tight, and Aokiji is an undercover pirate, which we know happens with X-Drake. That's how Sword works. They go undercover and become pirates.
Yep.
I also think Law is a Marine. I think Law is a Marine or a part of Sword in the same way that Corazon was a part of Sword. But I think Aokiji is now the head of Sword and is the direct confidant of Akainu, able to finish the true goal of the Marines, to accomplish that without the control of the world government. And I think Akainu and Aokiji are still connected in that way. That's how I say it. I don't think Aokiji goes, ooh, like what does he say to Smoker? I'm still me. If he was living as a pirate but still himself, he would have joined Luffy's crew. Or Law's. Or the Revs.
Yeah.
He would have joined the Revs, ultimately. If Aokiji truly believed in the greater good the way he does and wanted to fight for that, he's not joining Blackbeard, he's joining the Revs every day of the week.
Do you think he's pierced he's pierced Garp with the icicle?
Yep.
Do you think that's real straight through him?
Yep. I think he did it to make it look real.
But do you think it is real? Or has he made it to look real?
No, I think he did it really. I think he really did stab Garp. I just think he didn't kill Garp for a reason.
Just put a massive hole through him, though.
Put a hole through him. Yeah, of course, but...
Have you watched Young Justice?
Yes, all but the last season, I believe.
So, you've seen season 2?
Yeah.
Where Aqua Lad becomes a bad guy?
Yes.
And stabs...
I think it's going to be the exact same, yeah.
Stabs Artemis with his water sword, but like fakes it so it kind of
it goes around. No, I don't think it's anything as complicated as that, because I feel maybe that's a really logical way to... But there was blood, and Garp coughed blood, no?
I feel like that's easy to fake, because they were fighting.
So he could have just actually had blood in his mouth. Yeah, no, I like the idea. It's easy. It's an easy way to explain how Garp lived.
He's done fake out attacks before.
He's done for, like, I know it's obvious now, but the attack he used on Saul was literally ice time capsule, and people thought Saul was dead. Like, I think there is a very strong chance that he's done a fake out stab, and yeah, that would make a lot of sense. I also think he could have also just done a non-lethal stab to Garp.
Or he's like, I need to communicate with Garp immediately. How am I going to do this? I'll just kidnap Kobe.
He didn't kidnap Kobe.
No, but he may have just been like, he may have got the ball rolling for someone.
Who did? No, so correct me if I'm wrong. So Blackbeard took Kobe at the
Amazon
Empress
Lily.
Island, at Amazon Lily.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Blackbeard who physically took Kobe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Kobe gave himself up in order to save every other Marine, and the Amazon Lily people, and negotiated with Blackbeard to save them and to take him. So I think Aokiji had less of that, but I think Aokiji may have maybe known that Garp would prefer to be in the place of Kobe, or you're right, maybe he went, oh, I can't conspire with Kobe, but I can conspire with Garp. So let's switch them around. How do we switch them around? Hey, Garp, come save Kobe. I'll keep you.
Yeah.
Because I can't lose face to Blackbeard. I can't show that I'm too weak to hold a Marine. I can also show that I can beat an even stronger Marine, like the Marine, the best
Fist
Marine
of the
ever.
Marines.
The hero of the Marines, the fucking... He wears a dog's head sometimes. I love Garp as well.
Oh, okay. I know we're almost at 2 hours. But
Yeah,
do you know who also wears dog hats?
No.
Like the Skypian priests.
Yes, actually, and I'm all in the idea that Kalgara is a monkey D. I am all in. I don't know who did the theory initially. I don't remember where I heard it, likely on YouTube, but there is someone out there who did a theory saying that Kalgara is a monkey D, and that Luffy is related to the Skypians.
Look at the Skypians, like, face,
Yeah.
like, tattoos.
And the tattoos.
Dragon.
Has those tattoos. Yes, you're right, the dog hat are worn by Skypians. I really like that idea. I also think there is almost going to be like a Bleach moment. I don't know if you've read Bleach. No. So in Bleach, basically, if you don't want to hear it, block it out. Spoiler alert. The main character, or one of the main characters, is basically a culmination of all the races within the world. I think there's going to be something similar like that with the Will of D is going to have every single race in the world, and I think Luffy may have a little bit of genes from everywhere. I personally think I'd prefer it if it was just like a little bit of Skype. Like he had like Kalgar, he had a little Shandoran in him.
Yeah.
I'd be like all over that. I don't think he needs to be like part fishman, part fucking mink.
Tontara.
Part Tontara, yeah. Part giant. Like I don't think there needs to be all that. I don't think it needs to be as complicated or as everyone is, or Luffy is everyone. Because like obviously the narrative point for that is to be like he is a truly impartial person because he is partially everyone. Like in Bleach's case, it's like he is an impartial creature because he actually sees good and evil because he has
Good and evil in him.
Evil. Yeah, he has ties to everything.
That sounds stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I don't love it as an idea in Bleach. I didn't love the execution, but I do think it is gonna lend its. There's like the idea is gonna be lent by Oda to go. Okay, Luffy has a little bit of Skypian or a little bit of Shandoran in him. He may have a little Buccaneer in him. I think Shandoran makes the most sense to just be like just Shandoran with the dog hat, helmet with the tattoos, and just Luffy's. I'm currently rewatching Skypiea, and when they first get to the island, just the sheer joy Luffy exudes about there being like he feels so happy that you almost feel like he is like at home in a weird way. He seems so real in that moment where he's just like truly excited in a way that even though he's excited at every island he gets to, he's like extra ecstatic. So maybe that could be part of the connection. Like he's just feeling that feeling of being home. Like, you know, that is something that happens with humans. You know, you go back to like the hometown of your great ancestor, and you're like, I don't even know this person, but you do feel a sense of like familiar. You recognize it as the same thing. Familiarity. I can't say it.
Stop twisting that microphone.
Yeah,
and yeah, that happened to me years ago when we went to Glasgow.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, this is chill. I get it.
Yeah. As when I go to, you know, the Netherlands, I went and visited my grandmother's, my Oma's, Appledorn, a small country.
How do you
village.
get there?
I train from Amsterdam, a small little country town, but
'Cause you wouldn't be able to catch a plane, would you?
no.
Because the plane would never land.
And that is the worst joke I've heard all week.
And it's a Monday.
It's a Monday, yeah. Well, all of last week too. Let's combine the last year.
Woo!
But yeah, no, I think there's an insane number of possibilities, and we could keep talking for probably another hour on just different theories we have in this world.
Next break week.
Yeah, and if you guys have something you really want us to delve into next break week, we love doing these deep dives on our break weeks. Please let us know. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about. You want us to just talk about more about Elbaf, or do we need to talk about other big things that have happened? Do you want us to touch the last decks of the world and touch on what happened in Hachinosu and with the Revs and what's happening with every faction?
Yeah, are you listening to this whole podcast? Let us know.
I looked at our analytics. Not really. But
Fair enough.
I'm glad we're making it still.
It's happening.
It's fun. It's fun, and we're getting to have the conversation we were having at work anyway. And
now we're just not getting paid to have these conversations.
yeah, we're not
before.
getting paid. But good news. Congratulations, Declan got a new role within the company and has moved location, so we no longer work together, which makes these conversations all the better. And I'm really happy we started this podcast so we didn't lose this
This moment,
of our friendship. Forces us to keep in touch as well, because it can always be hard when you're starting new roles and working new places and living different lives. So yeah, I'm very thankful.
And we
have
do
this
live different
opportunity.
lives as two different people.
What?
Or we're the same person.
You mean we're different people? What do you mean? I don't wanna.
I think I'm gonna just snip that bit and replay it 3 times. I don't get it. What was that?
I don't know. I was just like, what do you mean we're different people? We're the same person.
Different people. Because do you know why we're different people? Because
Do you reckon you're gonna cut this episode about 5 minutes ago?
I
And now, give it a second. We're gonna wave, and then we're gonna go. Fucking
I
cherry
love
pies.
cherry pie. I
love
hate drink.
Mockdown podcast.
Weep, weep, weep,
See you next week. Bye, bye, bye.
No, keeping it all in.
Please don't.